Imagine waking up one day to realize the man you loved and trusted humiliated you in front of everyone you knew. That's exactly what happened to me. My name is Laura Quinn, I'm 38, and I've always been sharp, composed, and successful. My husband, Derek Stone, 42, appeared perfect on the outside, but at a charity gala, he humiliated me in front of all our friends and business associates. The shock hit me like a punch to the chest. I felt my world collapse in that single moment. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. After the gala, I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my head. Derek's smirk, the whispers, the way he made me feel small, it was unbearable. But amid the heartbreak, I realized something powerful. I had $500 million under my name, and Derek couldn't touch it. That money became more than wealth, it became a tool for my independence and my plan. I spent days in my private office, planning quietly. I hired a discreet lawyer, Rico Lane, and a strategist, Mira Vale, to help me take control. I started small, moving assets he thought he controlled. Watching him scramble behind the scenes brought a mix of satisfaction and relief. I wasn't just reacting, I was planning every step carefully. Slowly, I regained power and built a life that Derek could no longer influence. I acquired businesses he underestimated, surrounded myself with allies he had burned, and rebuilt my world on my terms. By the time he realized what was happening, I was untouchable. I learned that betrayal could be transformed into strength, and humiliation into freedom. What started as heartbreak became the moment I reclaimed my life. I still remember the day I met Derek. It was during our sophomore year in college, and he had this confidence that made everyone notice him. At first, he seemed charming, caring, and devoted. We quickly became inseparable, and people envied the life we built together. From the outside, everything looked perfect, dinners, trips, and celebrations, but behind closed doors, the story was very different. Over time, I started noticing subtle hints that something wasn't right. Bills didn't add up, conversations about investments seemed vague, and Derek always had excuses when I asked questions. One evening, while reviewing our finances, I discovered evidence he had been manipulating business deals, funneling resources, and using my money to cover his risky ventures, all without telling me. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. The man I trusted most was making decisions that affected my life without my consent. I felt a deep mix of anger and disbelief. How could someone I loved so much treat me like a pawn in his game? Every memory of our perfect life suddenly felt like a lie. I replayed moments in my head, wondering if I had been blind or if he had just been so clever in hiding his intentions. The hurt was overwhelming, and I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. That night, I understood that I was not his partner in anything that mattered, just a tool he could use when it suited him. The betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined, leaving me questioning everything I believed about trust, love, and loyalty. I realized I needed to protect myself, not just my heart, but my life and everything I had worked so hard to build. The mask of our perfect life had finally fallen, and I was left to face the raw, bitter truth. I stumbled out of the gala, my heels clicking against the marble floor, tears blurring the sparkling lights around me. I avoided every camera, every whispering guest, but I knew the story was already spreading. By the next morning, murmurs and gossip had reached every corner of our social circle. Derek, of course, played the perfect role of the shocked, concerned husband, acting as if nothing had happened and subtly twisting the story to make me look unstable. Watching him perform that act made my stomach churn with disgust. As I sat alone in our penthouse that night, memories of our years together replayed in my mind. Every small lie he told, every decision made without my input, every time I brushed off my instincts, all of it came flooding back. I realized how carefully he had constructed this illusion of partnership while quietly keeping control over every significant move. Sitting there, I also reminded myself of what he could never touch. The $500 million I had built and managed myself was mine and mine alone. For the first time since the humiliation, I felt a flicker of clarity and control. That fortune wasn't just money, it was power, freedom, and the foundation of the life I could reclaim on my terms. The betrayal stung deeply, but it also highlighted my leverage, the tool I could use to rewrite the rules of this marriage, and maybe, my entire future. I realized that the fallout wasn't just embarrassment, it was a turning point. The stakes were clear: protect what was mine, expose what had been hidden, and ensure that no one, not even Derek, could ever manipulate me again. The game had changed, and I was determined to win. I retreated from everyone, locking myself in the quiet of our city apartment, where no one could reach me or judge my thoughts. The world outside buzzed with gossip, but inside, I had space to think clearly. My mind kept circling back to Derek's betrayal, and with every memory, my anger grew, but so did a strange, powerful clarity. I realized that I didn't need to confront him publicly to take control, I just needed a plan. I reached out to two people I could trust completely. Rico Lane, a sharp and discreet lawyer, was known for navigating complex financial battles without leaving a trace. Mira Vale, a strategist with an uncanny ability to foresee moves and countermoves, became my partner in designing the next steps. Together, we began mapping out every asset, every weakness, and every opportunity Derek had underestimated. Sitting in that room with them, listening to their ideas, I felt a surge of empowerment unlike anything I had experienced before. The rage that had once threatened to consume me transformed into focus and determination. I wasn't plotting revenge out of spite, I was reclaiming my life and asserting my worth. Every decision was deliberate, calculated, and quiet, ensuring that Derek remained oblivious to the storm building around him. For the first time since the gala, I felt a sense of control. The humiliation and heartbreak had sparked something in me, a recognition that power didn't need to be shouted, it could be wielded silently, efficiently, and devastatingly. I vowed that when the time came, Derek wouldn't see it coming. I wasn't ready to fight publicly yet. I was ready to win quietly, decisively, and on my terms. I began by making subtle moves, quietly liquidating assets Derek had always considered untouchable. Every transaction was invisible to him, leaving no trail he could follow. I watched from a distance as the first ripples of panic reached him, even though no one else would ever know. The satisfaction of seeing him scramble behind closed doors, powerless and unaware of the full picture, was intoxicating. Soon, I noticed changes in his behavior. Derek became cautious, overly attentive, and even suspicious during casual conversations. It was clear he suspected something, though he had no idea of the scope of my actions. I could almost feel him monitoring every detail of my life, trying to catch a hint of my next move. The tension was thrilling, it fueled my focus and sharpened every decision I made. Despite the private chaos, I maintained my public composure. I attended meetings, dinners, and gatherings as if nothing had changed. My smile remained effortless, my words polished, and my presence commanding. No one outside my inner circle sensed a shift, and that invisibility became my greatest weapon. Every step was a test, a way to gauge his reactions and adjust my strategy. I was no longer reacting out of hurt or anger, I was observing, calculating, and controlling the pace. Each small victory reminded me of my independence and reinforced my confidence. I could dismantle his influence piece by piece, all while appearing serene and untouchable. The game had begun, and I was already several moves ahead, enjoying the quiet thrill of watching him flounder in the shadows of my strategy. I made my move on a company Derek had long coveted, one he believed was beyond my reach. He never imagined I could orchestrate such a takeover, and that underestimation became my advantage. Every detail was carefully executed, contracts, negotiations, and contingencies were managed flawlessly by Rico and Mira. By the time Derek realized what was happening, every loophole he might exploit had already been sealed. When he tried to intervene, his attempts were futile. I could feel his frustration building, the same arrogance that had once masked his cunning now working against him. Watching him stumble in silence, knowing he had no power over this, gave me a rush of exhilaration I had never experienced before. For the first time, I felt the full weight of my own influence, the thrill of finally being in control rather than being manipulated. Despite the intensity behind the scenes, my public demeanor remained calm and polished. I attended the announcement as if it were any other business matter, offering smiles and words of courtesy, hiding the satisfaction that burned inside. Derek's growing irritation was invisible to everyone else, but I relished it. My control over the situation, combined with my outward grace, only deepened his sense of impotence. That day marked a turning point. I wasn't just reclaiming what was mine, I was reshaping the game entirely. The power I had quietly built surged through me, affirming that I could operate above deceit and still emerge victorious. Derek's world, once untouchable to me, was now firmly within my reach, and I had never felt more alive or unstoppable. Derek cornered me one evening in the quiet of my office, his tone smooth, his smile carefully measured. He tried to charm me, to make me doubt the steps I had taken, as if his words alone could erase the betrayal he had caused. Every sentence dripped with manipulation, each one testing whether I could be swayed or intimidated. For a moment, memories of the gala, the laughter at my expense, and the countless times I had ignored the signs of his deceit flooded my mind. The sting of humiliation returned, but this time it fueled something stronger than hurt, it ignited determination. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to let the fear or shame creep back in. Calmly, I exposed his lies in that private room. I spoke truths he had never expected me to acknowledge aloud. I reminded him, not for the world but for him alone, of the manipulations, the secrets, and the ways he had underestimated me. I didn't yell or cry. I didn't seek revenge in front of anyone. Instead, I laid everything bare with clarity and precision, letting him feel the weight of his own actions without a single witness. The tension was suffocating. I could see his confidence faltering, the charm slipping away as reality settled in. I had transformed every moment of past pain into resolve, turning vulnerability into strength. By the time our conversation ended, I was no longer the woman he could corner with lies or charm. I was the one holding control, and he finally realized, even privately, that I was not to be underestimated again. After the confrontation with Derek, I knew I needed support beyond money and strategy. I reached out to people he had wronged over the years, those whose talent and insight he had dismissed or destroyed. Eli Fox, a brilliant business consultant who had once been sidelined by Derek's arrogance, and Nina Hart, an old friend who had quietly watched my struggles, became my closest allies. Their knowledge, loyalty, and perspective were invaluable, and together we began to forge a new path. Slowly, I built a network that extended far beyond wealth. These weren't just colleagues, they were people who respected my judgment, admired my resilience, and feared the quiet power I had cultivated. With each alliance, I felt the walls I had built around myself crumble, replaced by genuine trust and collaboration. For the first time, I realized I was part of a team that strengthened me instead of threatening me. Working with Eli and Nina also brought a sense of emotional satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer isolated, no longer a target for manipulation. Every plan we developed, every decision we made, reinforced my sense of security and autonomy. Derek's influence over my life had diminished, replaced by relationships built on mutual respect and shared goals. Through this new network, I discovered strength in connection, realizing that power was not just about money or strategy, it was about people who believed in you and stood beside you. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt whole, confident, and unshakable, ready to embrace the life I had fought to reclaim and expand beyond anything Derek had ever imagined. The day I finalized the acquisition, I felt a calm thrill coursing through me. Every detail had been meticulously planned, every angle anticipated, and the announcement was timed to maximum impact. When the news hit the business world, the reaction was electric. Elite circles that Derek had long dominated were stunned to see me take control of an empire he had always coveted. The shock rippled through every boardroom and social gathering, and I watched it unfold with quiet satisfaction. Derek's response was immediate but ineffective. He realized, too late, that the foundation he had built was no longer unshakable. Pieces of his influence began slipping away, and the realization that I was no longer under his shadow filled the air with tension. For the first time, his power seemed fragile while mine surged steadily forward. I felt an emotional high unlike anything before. I no longer reacted to his presence, his words, or his attempts at intimidation. Instead, I led, confident in every decision and every move I made. The humiliation, fear, and doubt that had once gripped me were gone, replaced with a composed authority that others noticed and respected. That moment marked a transformation. I was no longer just defending myself or reclaiming what was mine, I was actively shaping the future, defining the rules, and moving with precision. Derek's crumbling empire was merely a backdrop to my rise, and I relished the clarity of my new position. I had become the one in control, the one setting the pace, and the one everyone now watched with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. I invited Derek to a private meeting, the kind where words carried weight and every glance mattered. The deal I placed before him was precise, airtight, and impossible to refuse. I watched as he read through the documents, his confidence slowly eroding with each clause. He realized that every advantage he had counted on had vanished, replaced by my meticulous planning and unshakable control. Even as the meeting ended, I remained composed, every gesture and word measured. Outside the room, the world saw only elegance and calm. There was no hint of the satisfaction I felt inside, no trace of the triumph that came from seeing him confront the consequences of his own arrogance. Derek, once so dominant and untouchable, walked away humbled, his ego shattered, and I could sense the quiet defeat in his demeanor. The moment brought an unexpected clarity. For years, I had carried the weight of betrayal and manipulation, letting it shape my fears and choices. Now, that burden lifted. I had reclaimed not only my wealth and authority but also my self-respect. The empowerment I felt was deep and undeniable, a steady confidence that came from knowing I had orchestrated my own path and refused to be controlled again. For the first time since the humiliation at the gala, I breathed freely. Derek's departure marked the end of his influence over me, and the beginning of a life I fully commanded. I felt light, strong, and unstoppable, the culmination of every careful step I had taken, every risk I had calculated, and every moment I had refused to surrender. The freedom was mine, and I finally embraced it completely. Sitting alone in the quiet of my penthouse, I let myself look back on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the countless moments where I had doubted myself, they all felt like stepping stones that led me to this point. Each act of deception Derek had committed had pushed me to examine my own strength, forcing me to grow in ways I never imagined. I thought about how carefully I had navigated each challenge, how I had built a life that no one could shake, and how I had learned to trust my instincts above all else. The pain of humiliation had transformed into resilience, and the anger that once consumed me had become fuel for strategic action. I realized that self-worth wasn't something anyone could give me, it was something I had claimed for myself, piece by piece, through deliberate choices and unwavering focus. Looking at the woman I had become, I felt a deep sense of pride. I was no longer the vulnerable wife who had depended on someone else's approval or protection. I was decisive, confident, and capable, with a life built entirely on my terms. Every relationship I nurtured, every decision I made, reflected the power I had cultivated, not through force, but through clarity, intelligence, and determination. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative. I understood now that betrayal could be a teacher, revenge could be a path to empowerment, and growth was born from embracing challenges rather than fleeing them. I was no longer defined by hurt or loss, I was defined by my strength, my independence, and the life I had courageously claimed as my own. With Derek completely out of the picture, I turned my focus toward building something meaningful beyond business victories. I began investing in ventures that reflected my values, projects that supported education, women in leadership, and innovative startups overlooked by traditional investors. Each initiative felt like a statement of who I had become, a reflection of the life I wanted to shape rather than one dictated by anyone else. Slowly, I created a world that was vibrant, respected, and fully mine. The people I worked with admired my vision and trusted my judgment, and my influence extended far beyond mere wealth. I traveled, collaborated with innovators, and nurtured communities, all while maintaining the poise and elegance that had become my signature. Derek could never have imagined this life, not because of money or status, but because he had never understood resilience, foresight, or integrity. The most satisfying part was the quiet victory. My revenge had not been about confrontation or public humiliation. It had been about constructing a life that reflected my strength, intelligence, and values. Every success, every partnership, every achievement was a reaffirmation that I no longer needed to prove myself to anyone, least of all him. For the first time in years, I felt complete freedom. I moved forward with pride, knowing I had transformed betrayal into opportunity and pain into purpose. The life I had built was proof of my independence and my worth, and the sense of fulfillment I carried was far more powerful than any moment of revenge could ever be. Success, dignity, and self-respect had become my ultimate triumph. Sometimes life knocks you down in ways you never expect, and betrayal can feel like it will break you completely. I've lived through moments where humiliation seemed endless, where the people I trusted most turned against me. But I learned that those moments don't define you, your choices afterward do. Every step I took to reclaim my life, every decision to stand tall rather than crumble, shaped the woman I am today. I want you to understand that strength doesn't come from avoiding pain, it comes from facing it and refusing to let it control you. Self-reliance isn't about doing everything alone, it's about trusting yourself enough to make the decisions that honor your worth. Rising above betrayal isn't about revenge alone, it's about building a life that reflects your values, your vision, and your power. Looking back, every challenge, every setback, every moment of doubt became a lesson in resilience. I discovered that the deepest wounds can inspire the greatest growth, and the moments that feel like endings often become new beginnings. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this: no one can take your strength unless you give it away. The life you deserve is within your hands, and rising from betrayal can be the most empowering choice you ever make. Pain may visit, but how you respond will define your legacy. Hold your head high, trust your instincts, and let every setback fuel your determination. Empowerment, independence, and dignity are not just words, they are the path to reclaiming your life. Hey besties! Thanks so much for watching till the end. This story was a journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimate triumph. Imagine trusting someone completely, only to have them humiliate and deceive you, yet turning that pain into power. Watching Lara rise, reclaim her life, and build a future full of respect and independence is inspiring. If you felt her journey, don't forget to like, share, drop a comment, and subscribe for more.